So, welcome to the Friday afternoon Sex and Healing Relationship interactive webinar. I encourage you to ask questions now, and I'm going to go through today and share with you again something that has recently showed up in my office, and that's regarding how to manage the triggers or when you become activated as a result of the betrayal trauma you're experiencing. So recently I've had some of my betrayed partners come in, and they have shared with me that they're really struggling with getting triggered and their system getting activated and then managing it in the moment. So we have been spending time in group as well as in some individual sessions going through some strategies and ideas on how to work with those times that you might be triggered. We refer to them as being activated. So you're going to hear me use both of those terms, and I'm just interchanging them. They mean the same thing. And we're going to talk about what being triggered or being activated really is. We're going to also spend some time talking about how it shows up. There is kind of a pattern to the process of when we get activated or triggered. And we're going to talk about then how do you manage it. So we're going to focus on how the betrayed partner can manage those triggers, as well as the addict partner, how they can help their partner who is triggered, their betrayed partner who is triggered. So let's talk about what a trigger and activator is. It is an emotional, environmental, sensory, or a situational stimuli that can elicit a trauma response that is linked to the betrayed partner's distress, that's related to their addicted loved one's addiction. So that's a lot of words there. In other words, we can have situations that come up and we get triggered into our betrayal trauma. So there is a physical and an emotional reaction due to this betrayal trauma. It's part of the brain's natural way of keeping us safe. So we are going into fight, flight, or freeze. So you're going to have all the symptoms related to that because the brain gets hijacked, and we're going to go into those types of physiological responses. They can be terrifying at times. They can feel like they're all consuming. Of course, we teach in groups and in individual sessions that they're unsolicited. It is not your fault that they happen. They just happen, and they can come out of nowhere. The other thing is that as the activation or the triggering occurs, it sets into motion a series of events. And this can be very intense and very distressing. Some of the betrayed partners will say to me, gosh, it was so bad. I just couldn't figure a way out of it. I felt like I was going to stay there forever. And remember that with each betrayed partner, the way they experience being activated or triggered is very different. So it's highly unique and individualized. Like I said, it is not the betrayed partner's fault when they get activated or triggered. It is a natural part of recovery. I hate to tell you that, but it is. It's going to happen. I have not heard of one single betrayed partner who has gone through recovery without one time ever being activated or triggered. So it's really important that we teach, as part of the healing work that you do from betrayal trauma, how to actually understand when you get activated, and then learn how to take the time to get your nervous system back online, get back to baseline. So as a reminder, remember, betrayal trauma reduces the betrayed partner's window of tolerance. And so it's very difficult at times for the betrayed partner to feel grounded and calm and in their body. So in the early days, they may find themselves being activated and triggered all the time. Hopefully, as they do their recovery work, and what I generally see is very few exceptions, that if they're doing the work consistently as a routine with rituals, you see that the activation and the triggering reduce and begins to go away. Now, there are other factors that we have to keep into consideration, and that is things like, I have partners who have had past betrayals. I've had partners who have had past traumas, and they may have some current stressors that kind of compound some of the activation and the triggering. And so that is also part of some of the individual recovery work that we do from betrayal trauma. So let's talk about the chain of events that happens when a betrayed partner gets activated or triggered. So what's going to happen is there's going to have an alarm bell that goes off due to some type of a stimuli. We talked about that, whether it's environmental, emotional, situational. Then as the brain recognizes that there's threat, there is physiological flooding. All of a sudden, the body just reacts and the brain gets hijacked. And the brain is then going to go into two general responses. One of them is the fight response. So how that shows up oftentimes is the partner goes into safety seeking. They might start becoming preoccupied with the situation around them, with creating safety for themselves, with figuring out what the betraying partner is doing. There's emotional flooding that occurs. There's intense body sensations. So they're in that fight response. It doesn't feel good when you're there. The second response we often see is the flight response, the freeze response. I kind of group those two together. With that, there's more shutdown. I see betrayed partners who become very avoidant. They don't want to talk. They withdraw. They start stuffing their concerns because either they don't know how to verbalize it, or they don't know how to handle it, or they've gone to the addict partner in the past without the results that they've needed to help themselves regulate that trigger or the emotional reaction that's occurred in the past. So some of the physical things you notice when you are triggered or activated, and it's really important that the betrayed partner understands what it feels like in my body. What are those sensations that happen when I feel myself starting to get activated? So it could be things like you feel more tense. You have your heart rate starts beating. You feel those palpitations. You may sweat. You may find yourself a little more shaky, not only on the outside of your body, but sometimes I've had betrayed partners describe it as feeling like my insides are shaking. You could have hot flashes. You might start to feel panic, like it's harder to breathe. You could have nausea. You could get dizzy. You can have chest pains. Sometimes I've had betrayed partners who they start hyperventilating and they have to work on figuring out how to get out of that. The inability to focus, tunnel vision occurs. And at times, some of those memories will come back up to mind. Pictures in your mind, we call those flashbacks. So those are some of the physical responses that occur when you're activated. So let me tell you some situations that cause the betrayed partner to get activated. And this is typically around the behavior of their addict partner. So one of them is that the betrayed partner is noticing that the addict is not attending their meetings when they should and not going in to see their therapist. So there's long periods of time where they are assuming that the addicted partner is not doing their recovery work. So they don't see that consistency and they're much more easily triggered and activated. Another one is when scheduled check-ins are on the calendar and the addict partner ignores it. I find a lot of betrayed partners get triggered around that. They have a need for a check-in, whether it's a daily need for a brief check-in, a couple of times a week, one time a week, you do a fairly lengthy check-in. That is so important to help that betrayed partner stay grounded. I've had partners get activated because they see someone that looks similar to the affair partner. And so in their mind, they have either a picture of what the affair partner looks like, or maybe they've seen pictures. And so anybody similar to that is going to elicit, a trigger. Another time is you might be watching a movie and a scene's depicted that mirrors some of the actions and behaviors of the addict partner. And so that's a trigger. Seeing the addict partner look at other women can also be a trigger. Whether they are or not, I'm going to tell you the betrayed partner is very tuned into that. So whether your eyes are taking notice or not, it's going to be a trigger when the addict partner does that. Another one I see is when the addict partner becomes really defensive, when the betrayed partner goes to them and maybe asks them about their recovery because they want to know how it's going. Maybe they're just generally curious. Maybe they are doing some safety seeking to see if work is being done so they can feel safe and secure. But when the partner gets really defensive, I see a lot of the betrayed partners getting triggered. Sometimes it's just experiencing holidays like we just had, a happier time, or going through and seeing pictures, photo albums like on your phone, things like that. You know, I had somebody come in telling me that this past week they had a memory come up on their phone that the phone just kind of automatically does at times, and that triggered them in the moment. Okay, so we have this, you know, situation where we get activated. So the body system is going. This, secondly, the second chain of event is it leads to feelings. So there's some really intense feelings. So this is an emotional state that's set in motion when activation occurs. So it's going to be everything from sadness to anger, anxiety, like I told you, fear, a lot of fear, mistrust, irritability. The betrayed partner has this desire to really lash out at others. It could be their children. Most likely it's going to be the betraying partner that they lash out to. They can feel numb, shut down, very detached. They'll have feelings of loneliness. They might even want to isolate and pull away from everybody. And there's a lot of confusion. And we can have more than one emotion at one time. So oftentimes there is a flooding of emotions that occur when the betrayed partner is activated, which leads to the third step in the chain of events. And that is, all of a sudden, the shame-based belief of that betrayed partner kicks in. So a shame-based belief is a negative belief that the betrayed partner has about themselves that is present when activators occur. So I'm activated, and then it's paired with the accompanying feelings. So I'm going to give you some examples of shame-based beliefs. It's things like, maybe something's wrong with me. Why can't I get over this? Why am I still triggered so easily? Everyone else seems to be lovable. Maybe I'm not lovable. My husband doesn't love me. It's obvious because of the acting out he's done. No one is there for me. I can't trust anyone. I'm all alone. I'm not good enough. Otherwise, my partner wouldn't have sought out other women or other men. Then from there, the next chain of events is it goes into critical thinking. We go into the stories that we tell ourselves that are those thoughts being fed from our shame-based beliefs. So that shame-based belief of maybe there's something wrong with me might lead to the critical thought of, I'm never going to get better. You know, I'm always going to have this problem because I don't have the ability to get over it. That shame-based belief of everyone seems lovable, maybe I'm not, is thoughts like my addict partner doesn't love me and I will never be truly loved. Maybe he's right, I'm unlovable. So for that shame-based belief of no one is there for me, I can't trust anyone in my life, thoughts that are supporting that belief are, I can't share with others what I'm going through. I'm the only one doing any recovery work. I'm never going to be able to trust my partner again because he can't or she can't show up for me. So now we're in all of this and we've got to figure out how to manage it because it can be very, very overwhelming. So let's talk about some of the things that you can do. So I'm going to first start with the betrayed partner. How do you manage when you get activated, when you get triggered? So the first thing that you need to do is to become aware of your own personal activators or triggers. There could be some consistency. Maybe there's certain things that always trigger you. So be aware of that. I believe in writing them down. I also believe in maybe even keeping a journal of it and kind of seeing when that activation occurs, when you are triggered. It could be increased during times when hormones are fluctuating. It could be in correlation, believe it or not, even with the full moon, which we have tonight. It could be around certain circumstances or situations. Maybe it's holidays, maybe it's you've got stress at work. So start to be aware of when you're vulnerable to being activated or triggered. Then, secondly, know what it feels like in your body when you're starting to get activated. So that requires a lot of self-awareness, which is one of the things I focus on with the betrayed partners as we're starting to kind of build some foundation for them for their recovery work. And that is constantly checking in to see where you're at physically, spiritually, emotionally, relationally. So we talk about your buckets. I talk about, is your bucket full or is your bucket empty? Because if you're finding that your bucket's really empty because maybe you've been giving and giving and giving, you haven't been doing the self-care you need, you haven't been reaching out for support, you're not doing your meditation practices to kind of calm your system down, then your bucket's going to be empty. And so it's really important that you focus on increasing your bucket. But every day, waking up and checking in and seeing, where am I at? Where is my bucket today? Because most likely, if it's pretty low, you're going to find yourself activated and triggered much more easily. Okay. The other thing is make a list of your symptoms so you know what it looks like for you. I know when my system's activated that I go right to anxiety and I feel shaky. So when I'm activated and triggered, my body likes to become very hyper aroused. I go into hyper arousal and I just feel like I've got to do something. I feel panicky. For some people, they will tell me that it feels like I just want to sleep all the time. I feel so depressed. My body feels like it's lead. It's like I'm walking through quicksand. So recognize those symptoms so they just don't come up on you suddenly. The minute you start to, recognize that it's happening, that's when you want to start putting into action a plan to help you calm your system down. Okay. So one of the ways that we can do that is we can take, intentional, specific steps for getting regulated. One is breathing exercises. Love breathing exercises. There's so many different types of breathing exercises. One of them is box breathing that we talk about, which is a deep belly breathing. And I have my clients imagine that in their mind that they're tracing a box. So as they trace up the box, they breathe to the count of 4 slowly, deep into their belly. They breathe, they hold it for 4 across. They breathe out slowly for 4, and then they hold it for 4. So that's one of the breathing techniques you can do. There's so many. If you don't know what to do, you can always go to YouTube. There's lots of people there that teach you how to do that breathing. I love some of the great meditations apps out there. They will talk you through breathing. Insight Timer is a great app that's free. You can sign up for it. When they ask you to pay money, look for that little link that says no thank you, and you get it for free. And then start looking for breathing exercises on there and start practicing them and see which ones feel good to your body. So that's really important. Know which breathing exercise works. The next thing you need to have as part of your plan is grounding techniques. So that can be something as simple as going out and sitting in the sun. It can be my clients tapping. That's called emotional freedom technique, which is we tap on certain meridian points in the body. And when we tap on those points, it calms the system. So it's important to help you get grounded. Out to somebody, that can be a grounding technique, and just talking it through and having somebody sit with you in that place of empathy and hear what's going on for you. The other thing is to remind you being activated is a common reaction to the trauma you're experiencing. So don't go into your shame. Instead, go into some self-compassion. One of the things that we use to get out of those chain reactions I just talked about is something called a shame prevention plan. And you can find it in Rob Weiss's and Kim Buck's book called Practicing Prodependence. I'll show it to you. In this book, there's lots of great exercises. These are many of the exercises that we apply in our groups for the betrayed partner strategies. And that shame prevention gets me back in to my body. It makes me aware of what's going on, and it gets me out of my critical thoughts by replacing a critical thought with a compassionate thought. So that is one of the ways that we can get through it. And we can remind ourselves that this is just a moment. This is just a time in our life. This is, a journey we're on. We're always going to be in the place we're at this particular time. I find that the best way to get us back to that point is the self-compassion practice and the gratitude. So oftentimes I'll tell my clients one way out of being activated is to go right into gratitude. So go out and take a walk in nature. Start noticing the things you're thankful for. Say it out loud or say it in your mind. Go to your journal and think about, in this moment, what am I so grateful for? And start listing it and writing it out. It's really important that we use that gratitude. It's one of those emotions, I call it the higher vibration emotion of gratitude. It makes us feel good. We feel so much better when we choose to be there. The next thing, connect with your body and bring yourself into the present moment by really focusing on what's going on internally. I love the 5 senses exercise. Hopefully everybody's aware of that. Your therapist has taught you that. As a gentle reminder, what you're going to do is I tell my clients, sit, put both feet on the ground. When we're trying to get somebody regulated in a session, I'll put essential oils on their wrist. I'll have them touch the tip of their nose so they can smell it. And I will have them hold on to worry stones. So they're smelling and they're feeling tactile, something in their hands. And then I have them look around the room and notice 5 things. And I ask them to add a descriptive word, like a round mirror or a white door. We look for 4 things that in that moment the person feels with their physical body. So it might be they feel their feet on the ground, they feel the stones in their hand. 3 things that they hear, which is usually my voice, the sound of the air conditioner. 2 things that they can smell or imagine smelling. So of course they're smelling the essential oils and they might imagine something else. And then the last thing is something that they taste or they can imagine tasting. This is such an effective way to get my clients back in and regulated when they're activated. Another way I like to get somebody back regulated when they are activated, is I love the cross-body tapping. That bilateral tapping on the body, combining with breathing, is another way to get back into your body. There's also the butterfly hug, which is over your heart. Kind of looks like a butterfly resting on my heart. And that's another way to get you back in your body. So anything to bring us back in where we can be more grounded and we'll feel more calm. Okay, the next one, I mentioned that just briefly just now. Get moving. Use the bilateral stimulation. Anytime we walk and we're doing this movement, or ride a bike. So oftentimes when clients are in conflict and both are activated, I tell the couple, go do something physical. Go out for a walk. Go out for a bike ride. Go do something, your body moving, and then come back. One of the things we do sometimes is if couples have a hard time talking without getting activated, I tell them to go for a walk and talk when they walk, because sometimes that motion helps them stay regulated. So just a thought there. Another way is to focus on thought stopping. Do a lot of journaling, figure out what's going on, get whatever's in your body, your thoughts in your head, out of your body, out of your mind, and onto paper. Maybe as you're journaling, recognize what the situation is. As you're journaling, maybe ponder and focus and meditate on some thoughts on how to remedy the situation. So just really doing that movement, that eye-hand coordination on paper, connects us again to prefrontal cortex and helps us to do some really effective problem solving. Like I tell my clients, it's actually very therapeutic. And it is a form of therapy that we use with our clients quite often. Do a shame prevention sheet like I talked about. That's another way to stop your thoughts. And like I said, the other thing is gratitude. Go to gratitude and start focusing on that. Listen to music. That's another thing. There's lots of different types of music that help you regulate. Everything from right frequency, which is a music that's very beautiful. It has a certain frequency to it, works with the brain, and the body reacts and generally will calm down when you do like that. So music is wonderful. Sing to the music, dance to the music. That can help you also feel grounded. If you put together a first aid kit, all of the women rather, in our program, when they're going through the group experience, they put together a first aid kit. And in there, they have things that connect with all of their senses that help them regulate. Everything from inspiring quotes to pictures to chocolate to bags of tea, and they'll make tea, to a playlist of songs, and turn to that. Use the things that are there in your first aid kit. Reach out to your support system. The effective way to do that is not to reach out to maybe the group you're in or the support system you have and tell them everything that's happening and go deep into what activated you, but rather asking them for support. Here's the situation. I'm activated. I don't know how to handle this. Give me some ideas on what I can do right now. So that's a really effective way to use your support people. And then express your needs to your betraying partner. Figure out what it is you need from them in that moment to help you feel more safe and secure, that will support you in becoming more regulated. Okay, so that's what the betraying partner can do. The addict partner, remain grounded when your betrayed partner becomes dysregulated and they're activated. It's really important that you have the ability to do that. Stay out of your own shame and don't get defensive. I find that once the addict partner gets defensive, it almost escalates the activation in the betrayed partner. Never tell the betrayed partner that she must not be doing her recovery work right because she's getting activated. I actually had somebody come in this week and tell me that their partner said that to them, and their partner also followed it up with, and you should be farther along are right now. I wouldn't expect you to get so triggered about this. So we talked about the fact that she's right on track, and yes, that's going to happen. So remember that it is going to happen. It's out of the betrayed partner's control. If you can keep that in the back of your mind and just hold the space. And then the next one is to focus on empathy. So really tune into her feeling words and validate her feelings. If you can do that rather than defending yourself, it's going to go so much better. Provide comfort and reassurance. So use words that are going to help the partner. And sometimes when you're both grounded, it's really wise to find out what those words are. I will say, what do you need to hear? What do you need your, addict partner to tell you? What do you need, to be reminded of in this moment? Work on being very reliable and consistent in how you respond. This is going to create more trust. So it's a great way to come together and work on doing your recovery together. And as we do it with consistency over time, then we rebuild the trust. Initiate some repair attempts. So ask your betrayed partner what you can do in the moment to help them. Ask them what you can do in the future to help them when this happens. For example, I had a group member say that she's asked her addict partner, her recovering partner, to remind her to take a time out when she gets activated. She's given him permission. So I had her go deeper in group, and we figured out how she needs him to do it. And so we go through things like, do you need him to touch you, put a reassuring hand on you? How do you want him to say it? What are the words, right? What words would activate you even more? So really have some clarity on that. It's okay for the addict partner to call a timeout, but make sure that when you do it, you let the partner know that you're doing it to help maintain connection and not create more disconnection, and that you're coming back to address it, after both people have calmed down and you're more emotionally regulated. So offer time and a safe space for your partner to also do some self-care. Lots of times, if you can just say to your betrayed partner, you know what, I'm going to take the kids, or I'm going to do dinner, or I'm going to do this for you. Why don't you go and you take care of yourself? Put yourself in timeout and do some really good self-care. That makes a world of difference, knowing that your recovering partner is willing to do that for you. And then the last thing is to really be honest and show up authentically. So what I mean by that is, if you recognize your shame is showing up and you're getting defensive, then just tell your partner, yes, you know what, I realize my shame's kind of kicking in right now. I'm going to take a breath now and really work on stepping out of my shame. Or maybe it's, yeah, I did look at that lady when we were standing in line to get food, and I apologize. I recognize that I was kind of doing that. My mind was wandering. I wasn't really focusing on my tools, and so this is what I'm going to do moving forward so it doesn't happen again. So really be honest, be authentic. So that's what the addict partner can do. So 3 final thoughts. Number 1, there is so much that both partners can learn as they work through the betrayed partner's activators and triggers. Provides so much opportunity for personal growth. We can work on shame reduction, communication skills. We can have more awareness of somebody else's feelings and develop empathy. Secondly, becoming triggered and activated will decrease as the betrayed partner is doing their recovery work, as long as they're doing it with consistency with their study, they're employing their skills, their tools, they're identifying any other underlying traumas they need to work on, you're going to see a reduction in the activation. And then lastly, I alluded to this earlier, that as the betrayed partner and the addict partner work on managing activation and triggers, it provides them with an opportunity to become a team and to work on building trust. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of help on what do I do when all of a sudden I'm just so activated, I don't know what to do, or what do I do when my partner gets that way?
Thank you, Debbie. Fantastic as always. I have a question, and I hesitate to ask this at the risk of being hated and berated by every betrayed partner ever. But I'm going to ask it anyway. Do betrayed partners sometimes choose to trigger themselves by Sherlocking, by reaching out to the addict's old affair partner, things like this?
Yes.
And
so I'll give you an example. Yes, that can happen. I had somebody come in because we had problem solved the situation so that she could stay regulated. And she came in and sat down on my sofa one day and she goes, okay, I didn't do what you told me to do, what we decided to do in session. I did the opposite. You told me how it was going to turn out. And you're right. I got so triggered and I went down, we call it going down the rabbit hole. I went down the rabbit hole and it was bad. So I'm going to start listening to you because you have some good ideas. I went, well, I hope you do, but even if you don't, that's okay. We're going to learn from it. We can always learn from every mistake we make. So we went through and we kind of identified, some ways that betrayed partner would like to have done it differently and how they can do it differently in the future. So yes, we can intentionally do that. And there are times where a partner will know that. Like I had one client a while back that she kept going back to bank accounts, right? And she knew that every time she did that, it would trigger her. But for some reason in her mind, she felt like she had to keep doing that. She never found anything, but she just kept going back and doing that, thinking she was going to find something. So what that did was it activated her. Her addict partner would come along and then she was so triggered with him. So she couldn't be emotionally regulated around him. And finally, one day the light bulb turned on and she went, okay, I realize now that's what's triggering me. And if I choose not to do that, then I'm not going to be triggered. And that's what she did.
But, some of these behaviors, the Sherlocking behaviors, I borrow that word from Michelle Mays, but, the digging in the bank accounts, the going through the wallet, the trying to get info from the affair partner, or, going through the phone, all of this stuff, it's a natural response, at least up until formal therapeutic disclosure. Should it stop after formal therapeutic disclosure? Why does it not always stop? And what can betrayed partners do when they've had the disclosure, the polygraph has been passed, and they're still doing it? I guess this is the situation you just answered the question, I guess.
Well, but I'm going to tell you what the key is right here. And that is, once we do a formal disclosure, if there's a polygraph and it's passed and we feel like, okay, all the cards are on the table, there's nothing else. I find that the betrayed partners are usually quite regulated. This really regulates them. Initially, after they kind of go through, they got to recover from the formal disclosure. Sometimes, that's a little bit of a challenge, but they recover very quickly. And as long as they see the addict partner doing their recovery work and not going back into old behaviors. The minute they sense, and they're so attuned to this, their addict partner's going back into some behaviors that they were doing when they were, in their addiction, that's when they go back into the Sherlocking. Okay. So they might notice that all of a sudden their husband, who's been so good about not taking the phone into the bathroom with them, they're taking the phone back into the bathroom. So now all of a sudden it's threatening their sense of safety and security. So that's what I see it's really dependent upon post-disclosure.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that clarity, because as you said when you were talking, and as I know from experience, 99.99% of the time, it's the addict who does something to re-trigger, basically. And just for the record, nobody needs their phone while they're on the toilet. You just don't. Leave it outside the bathroom. Um, okay, let's jump into the Q&A here. I know you say the goal is progress, not perfection, but my sex addict, porn addict partner's progress is slow, and I feel I'm pulling him down the path of recovery. I have past sexual trauma and have been cheated on before in serious relationships. I feel my triggers grow exponentially with his lack of urgency. I have a hard time disconnecting and focusing on myself. My partner's CSAT is the only one in our area, and he has recommended a few therapists for me, but I'm nervous because they're not CSATs. I would like someone local to lower the cost of hopefully doing disclosure. Can non-CSATs be as helpful? And what should I look for in one? The original DDA was 2018 with active addiction, but lying continuing until probably a couple of months ago.
Okay. So there's a couple of things there. One of them is the fact that you're getting activated because your partner's progress is slow. First of all, I want to validate that I think most betrayed partners are activated around this very thing as well. And it's like I remind the betrayed partner, when you come into recovery, you're connected to your prefrontal cortex most of the time. And so you've got the ability to have more emotional regulation, logic reasoning, you have much more awareness. So when they hit recovery, I find that they're just willing to do the work and they just jump into it, and they're wanting to feel better. Problem with the addict partner is, remember, they've been operating out of their limbic system because that's where addiction resides. One of the goals of recovery, and the reason you have to do recovery work so consistently over time, is you're rewiring the brain so that it's connected, it's got a stronger connection to prefrontal cortex. And so you're right, they are so slow. And there's a couple of ways to approach this. One of them is, and this is the hard one, and that is I work with my betrayed partner on how can we surrender or let go of the progress your partner's making. So what can we do to create support for you so when you're seeing that happen, you can still be okay? And I mean, that's a lot of hard work. And so we have to figure out other people to turn to, things to do in the moment when you're triggered, even ways to approach your partner. And I mean, I've worked with clients where we literally write down how they're going to go to their partner and say it to their partner and express their fear and make those vulnerable requests of the partner and see if they would be willing to even just start with one thing to create safety, or as far as, what they're doing in their own recovery work. That's one of the things, and I typically really focus on that with my betrayed partners, which is it's not the easy answer. I realize that. The other thing is, like I said, is I have actually had, if the addict partner feels comfortable, I have him or her come in with the betrayed partner, and we sit down and we work together on, okay, how can we create safety? Right. And in that environment, there's some rules regarding how we communicate and how we talk, as far as making requests and how we kind of work on it. And so sometimes we can create a safety plan that way. So I have found that to be very helpful. And that's another option that you could possibly do. Even if you feel comfortable with your husband's CSAT, that could be something that you could even discuss, with the therapist there. I think that helps with getting things accomplished in a more positive way and staying more regulated. The second part, you talked about going to a therapist that is not a CSAT. And are there good therapists out there? I believe there are. However, you're going to want to really kind of vet your therapist. First of all, like you said, if your husband's CSAT therapist is giving you some recommendations, then I would go to that therapist's website, look at their bios, ask for a consultation, 10, 15 minutes, check in with them and see, are you aware of the Prodependence approach to recovery? You could even recommend that they read, Rob's book on Prodependence, and even the book that Rob and Kim wrote on how do you practice it and things you actually can do in therapy, to help the betrayed partner recover. Ask them how much they have, how much addiction work they've done. Have they worked with partners of addiction? Kind of let them know where you're coming from, and see if they are willing to kind of step out of that codependency approach and kind of have a lot of empathy and support for you. Because there are therapists that even have other training besides just CSAT training that focuses on betrayal recovery for the partner. So that's what I would do. Do a 15-minute, kind of a visit with on the phone or on Zoom. Sometimes I do that with clients, and just see if it feels like a good fit.
Yeah, and I would add to the reading list for a non-CSAT, if you're going to do disclosure with them, I would suggest Stephanie Karn's book, Courageous Love, which talks about disclosure in great detail. And if you want to do disclosure and your partner wants, you should read it too. It's a great book about the process of disclosure.
Yeah, that's a fabulous book. Very
Yeah.
detailed for the partner in certain areas on, when you do your impact letter and things like that. And, we have had, even where I'm at, we have a lot of CSATs, but we have had people outside of our agency who are not CSATs that have supported clients, one of the partners through a disclosure. So it's very doable. You just want to make sure that, the therapist, and you even as a client, can teach and enlighten your therapist. I love it when my clients come in and teach me things. I've actually read books that they've come in and suggested, and it's been integrated into part of my therapy. So it's okay to do that as well.
Yeah. Okay, next one here. Hi, Debbie and Scott. Have you seen couples who can stay together in a new way as friends, completely accepting and choosing to have no agreements after thoroughly grieving the losses and being cool, just being a family and letting higher power and natural consequences deal with the addiction? So I think this question is, can we just say, okay, I'm an addict and I'm going to be an addict, but we're going to stay together? I think that's the question. Are you reading it differently?
No, I am looking at it that way as well. I'm going to tell you that this does come up at times with a betrayed partner. And we actually will spend a lot of time discussing, is it possible that if the addict partner never gets better, that they are choosing their addiction over repairing the relationship, that you're going to stay in this relationship or marriage? And can you manage it? Can you still survive and thrive? Thrive being the really imperative word there. And what would that look like? Because you're going to have a lot of clarity around the boundaries on this. It's not just, hey, we're going to, just let go of all our boundaries and whatever happens, happens. There are natural consequences. And, even with boundaries, natural consequences occur. And so one of the things that I will do is I will have the betrayed partner list all the reasons for staying. Put down all the reasons that you want to stay in this relationship. How does it benefit you? How does it benefit your children if you've got children? How does it benefit you financially? So look at all those areas and aspects. And then look at all the reasons for leaving. And I tell my clients that when the reasons for leaving are larger, the list is longer than the reasons for staying, typically I find that partners cannot stay in the marriage any longer. But yes, what you're going to do if you choose to kind of stay as friends is you've got to figure out what your common goals are. So if you're raising children together, that's going to be your focus. You're going to need to have boundaries around what do we talk about. So you as a partner, you're not going to be approaching the addict partner regarding their addiction and their acting out behaviors, right? That's going to be hard at times. Can you do that? It requires you to kind of step back and not be triggered by what you're seeing the other person do. And that's for both, the addict and the betrayed partner. So it is possible. It is not very common. It takes a lot of, I think, even your own individual work. You'll probably need to continue to do individual therapy so that you can kind of stay in that and figure out, especially, in the beginning days, on what that looks like. I've had some clients agree that we're going to stay together until the last one is, 16 years old and driving, or out of the house. And so sometimes if you know that there's a time limit, then you can kind of go and kind of create your own separate lives in some areas, and then figure out where you can connect. And that's where you join each other in your goals and in the activities that you do together.
Yeah. And I've seen this a couple times with addicts pushing for and eventually getting an agreement to an open relationship. That's just sort of what we're talking about here, except when their wife starts acting on the open part of the relationship, they get crazy. They can't have, they want their cake, but they don't want the wife to have her cake. Have you ever seen that? I mean, I've seen this twice that I can think of, and I'm like, well, guys, you're the one who pushed for this.
Yeah. Yeah, we just recently, there's a situation, that came to my attention, that very thing. And so it's really interesting because, you've had this addict partner who's created betrayal in the spouse. And now all of a sudden the spouse has done it and the addict partner is going through betrayal. So that's really complex. It's a very complex situation.
And can that situation, can a couple who's agreed to the open relationship and then realize, no, this isn't working, can they come back together in a monogamous relationship? Is it possible to undo
I always believe I believe anything's possible if two people are willing. I am very much resiliency based. And I think if two people are willing and they'll put in the effort and the work, absolutely. And what I see oftentimes is if people do that, and it's hard, I'm not going to tell you it's easy. You push through that, you do that, they get to the other side of it, and the relationship is so much better than it's ever been. And they'll say, finally, I'm in this authentic, honest relationship. And, when I'm struggling or when my partner's doing something I don't like, they'll listen to me and they'll respond. And, we're friends as well. And we weren't before. I hated him or I hated her. So, yeah, I believe it can.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big believer in whatever happens, relationships can not only be as good as before, but I think they can be stronger than before. Because we become vulnerable, we open up, and we develop true intimacy that we usually didn't have prior to things sort of falling apart.
Yeah, what I love about Prodependence is it's really based in hope. That's one of the tasks of a therapist using this approach, and that is we're there to instill hope in our client as they're doing their recovery. And so I tell my clients, if you're both doing your recovery work, they're in our program most often. They're in the program, they're doing their recovery work. Part of that recovery work is they come in and they do couples work. And, I tell them your relationship is going to be better than it's ever been. And that's the hope that we hold out. But again, it takes two people to be willing to do their recovery consistently over time to rebuild the trust.
Yeah, and I mean, I always think, I can't remember the name, it's a Japanese form of pottery where they make something really delicate and then they intentionally break it and sort of put it back together, and because they think it's more beautiful after it's been broken.
Yes.
And it is. I mean, they take something that's ordinary and they make it extraordinary for some, through that process. So, okay. This one, it comes down to, when I get triggered because he's on it, he's dishonest. We have an addict who's not being honest, who's not doing the work. When the betrayed partner gets triggered, the addict wants the betrayed partner to move on and calls her abusive for becoming triggered and activated. How common is that, and how do you deal with it?
I've seen it appear. Yes, it's shown up. I'm going to tell you, I have seen that. That is a really difficult negative cycle to get out of. And I think that one of the things that is helpful for the partner who's either been unfaithful, who's sex porn addict, is to really educate themselves on what is going on for the betrayed partner. And it's really important that you understand that. I believe Stephanie Carnes' book, Courageous Love, addresses some of that and can give you some information on that. Or even going into your therapist, if they are aware of betrayal and prodependence, going in and getting educated as the addict, unfaithful partner about what that's like and what you can do as the addict partner to help, them regulate. And one of it is, if you're not being honest and you are hiding things and you're maybe fearful that if you share it, she's going to get even worse, so you hold on to the information, then you're going to stay in that negative cycle. Again, I think that you may not be able to do it alone. You're going to have to get in with a therapist and have that therapist start to kind of unpack all the layers that are going on here. One of the things I would do with my couple is to sit down and we would map out the cycle they're in. that negative cycle. And then what we would talk about is, okay, what is that creating in you as far as your stories? I'd probably go through the whole chain of events that I just talked about. And then what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what the needs are in order to create that safety, because obviously the betrayed partner is not feeling safe. That's why they're snooping and, asking questions and, finding more things, and then they get reactivated. And what happens is they're going right back into their betrayal trauma at the level they experienced it when they had initial disclosure or discovery. And it's like I tell my clients, if you can understand that I can have a triggering situation that activates me, and I can go right back into the trauma. I'm going to feel it in my body like I'm back in my trauma. I'm going to have those same emotions and feelings. And it's a very hard place to be. So I imagine, that betrayed partner is really struggling to stay regulated because this is happening again and again and again. Now, one of the things in the book I mentioned that Rob and Kim wrote in Practicing Prodependence, there is an abuse inventory in there. And we've been actually working on that in my groups. So there's a whole checklist we go through. And we want to increase the awareness of what is abusive behavior. And just like the addict partner needs to have those bottom line behaviors identified, those inner circle behaviors identified, I also believe that betrayed partners need to do the same. Are there certain behaviors that I won't do in my safety seeking? And we do consider anger safety seeking. And there is a continuum of anger, right? And rage at one end is something that we don't want that partner going to, because it's the kind of type of safety seeking that is going to create abuse. And so really having awareness of, gosh, am I doing some abusive behaviors? So you have to have, and the partners, I have the partners even do self, they assess themselves as well as their addict partner. So really coming up with, okay, what are my inner circle behaviors? And then my middle circle behaviors, what are the things I'm doing that are leading me towards the center? And then my outer circle behaviors, what are the things that I can do so I can stay regulated and I won't get activated and triggered? So that's another approach to take for the betrayed partner as well as the addict partner. But it's hard to get out of it. And like I said, I'm going to circle back around to, you may need the help of a therapist to unpack it and put some ideas into place, some systems into place to help you.
Yeah. And I love both of those exercises you mentioned, the abuse exercise and the circle exercise. We use them. They work very well with addicts. They're essentially the same exercise that transferred from addicts over to betrayed partners with some tweaking. And they work really well. And any rough relationship, I think we always have to look at both sides. Yes, I'm being abused, but maybe I'm dishing some out too. I need to come up with my boundaries, create my, red circle, yellow circle, green circle behaviors, just like that other person does. But, my recovery is mine. My healing is mine. Your recovery is yours. I can't control it. And this is a lot of what prodependence is, yeah, sorry. I
was going to tell you, you made me remember something. One of the things that really activates and triggers my clients is, sometimes they'll go to their partner and I really try to educate and teach my my clients, my group members, that when you go, you make a vulnerable request. Here's what I need for safety. Would you be willing to do that? If not, what could you do? And so oftentimes they'll do that. And I don't know how well it goes for them, but what they get back from the addict partner is, you need to stay on your side of the street. You're on my side of the street now. So you need to get back to yours. This is my recovery. Well, that is very triggering. So while that may be true, it would probably be best to, rather than say that, then just say, what do you need for safety?
Yeah. Yeah. And
for both parties.
Yeah. And a vulnerable request, or even just saying for safety, is, as an addict, I will take it as you're coming onto my side of the street, but you're really not. You're trying to clean up your side of the street. And, this is one of the things we have to work with addicts about, is like, no, she's not trying to control you. She's trying to stay safe in the relationship. Boundaries are not about controlling you. Her boundaries are not about controlling you. They're about her finding some safety in her relationship with you so that you can stay together. But guys have a tough time wrapping their heads around that. So, yeah. Okay. This one, yeah, this is just a request. Like, I need some honesty. Yeah, this is an addict who's just not doing the work, and I think that takes you back to, okay, let's do our list of pros and the cons and make our decision. So we are essentially out of time here. Anything you want to add before we log out for the week?
No, just keep doing your work. That's all I would say. You know, any work is better than no work, and just take one day at a time. Like I tell my clients, if it feels so overwhelming that you don't know where to begin, just start with one thing. Even if it's just, you know, I'm going to go to bed at 10 o'clock tonight, or I'm going to make sure I eat 3 meals. Just start with something. Do it for a few days, add something else, but just, you know, it is a journey. It is not a destination. Hopefully these things that you're learning and implementing and using in your life, it's going to be something that you do for the rest of your life. So it's going to be part of your life moving forward. So, you know, I honor both the addicts that are recovering as well as the betrayed partners are doing their healing from betrayal trauma. It is hard work. I see it being done. I admire those people that do it. And even those who have the challenges, like a partner who's not in recovery, you know. So I think that's my final words.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody, for being here.